me get started, get into this discussion because we've got tons to get through with you in the next 45 minutes. So welcome all of you to this TMI webinar in association with Nihilus. I'm Eleanor Hill, editorial consultant, and I'm absolutely delighted to be your moderator for today, especially because we've got a super hot topic of AI and automation. I honestly don't think there's a more popular subject right now in Treasury, and it's one that's very close to my heart as well. And we're going to make it very real for you with a case study coming from our expert panelists, who are Natty from Taboola and Matt from Nihilus. And I will just ask them to briefly introduce themselves. So Natty, over to you, please.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you here. Nice to meet you as well. I'm Nati. I'm from Taboola. I'm the VP Finance. More than 15 years of experience on the finance world. Most of the time in the public companies. Spend a minor period on startup companies. Happy to be here. Looking forward.
Super stuff, Natty. Thank you so much. And Matt, over to you.
Awesome. Happy to be with you, Eleanor. Definitely happy to be with you as well, Natty. My name is Matt Harlan, the Chief Treasury Officer over at Nihilus. We are an all-in-one kind of cash management platform, AI-enabled, the leader in the next-gen TMS space. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys about the platform and also get into an interactive case study with Taboola.
Awesome stuff, Matt. Thank you so much. So, as Matt said there, it's completely interactive. We would love your questions. So please use the Q&A button, submit questions as we're going along. We'll leave time for them at the end. You can chat to us in the panel as well. And we will have some audience polling because we want to hear from you and know where you are with that. Oh, sorry, where you're at with your AI and automation journeys as well. But let's kick off and just set the scene a little bit on AI in Treasury. So Matt and Natty, you're dealing with this day in, day out, but there's so much hype around AI. So it would be good to understand, how has AI evolved from that lot of talk into real world applications in Treasury? Can you give us maybe some concrete examples of what you're seeing, please? Matt, maybe I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think maybe the earlier part of last year, AI was really considered a buzzword, right? We were really struggling to understand the practical application of it. How is it going to help our actual workflows? What benefit does it present to the practitioner? I think now we're seeing it, especially with companies like Nihilus, where AI is real. It can help you quickly index across multiple sets of data. It can give you insights into transaction flows, into forecasting, but it can also do things like help you strengthen your performance of your cash flow forecasting. So I like to consider AI as a nearest co-pilot or agent. I think there's been a lot of talks where people have a sense of fear that it's going to replace their workforce, but I actually think we should consider AI as an enabler. It's a tool, and it's there to help us. And so, it's exciting. I think as we, think about how technology has evolved over the last few years, we used to have, single server standalone systems, and now everything is in the cloud. And I think with the advent of AI, technology is moving at a really quick pace, and it's really important for practitioner communities and companies to make sure that they're abreast of all the changes that are happening in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Thank you for that. And I see we've got some questions coming in already. Good stuff. Keep them coming. Natty, what would you add to that in terms of the real world applications?
Well, I'm not an expert, just like, Matt is on treasury environment. I'm more broader on finance. But in terms of AI, we do see a lot of progress, mainly on as a public company. We do a lot of reviewing and Q&A and other reports and other analyst reports, focusing on learning, machine learning and AI analyze. And on specifically on the treasury area, we do see a lot of impact, and we will touch base on this down this discussion, but on the bank reconciliations, some places when you see payments done via bots and some AI tools. So yeah, very good stuff we see down the road that will obviously do a lot of impact on our business, when you manage such a broader group of employees.
Yeah, that's the thing. It can make such a tangible difference, which we will get to in a moment. But we talk so much about AI and the potential. I think it's really important to also recognize that it's still a technology that's evolving, and there are, of course, some limitations and potentially pitfalls that the audience need to be aware of when they're thinking about adopting these AI and automation tools. So, Matt, it's not a silver bullet, right? Unfortunately, I'm
Um,
sure everyone would love it to be, but it's not.
Definitely. I agree. Yeah. And I do see, do we want to address the question now, Eleanor, or keep going with the presentation?
If you keep going for now, and then I'll come back to the questions in a second.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to get into a bit of the agenda here. So we're going to start with a quick intro around the solution of Nihilus, what it is that we provide. And then I'm going to intro Natty, understanding Taboola's use case, their unique challenges. I think before Taboola came to Nihilus, they were in need of a TMS, they were in need of automation of workflows. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to go into detail to talk about the actual solution, really unpack AI capabilities and how it helped Taboola in their workflows, increase kind of board guidance, executive presence, reconciliation, et cetera. We're going to get into a bit of an impact ROI with a live demo, and then we're going to kick it back to the audience to do a Q&A session. So let's talk about what Nihilus is. Nihilus is a cash management platform. We help manage and reconcile cash, both helping to automate treasury and accounting workflows. When you think about Nihilus, it's kind of a three-part platform. The first section is around data ingestion. And so one big issue for a lot of companies is making sure that the TMS can handle robust processes from multiple different systems. And I think historically, legacy TMS has served the bank and the ERP quite well in creating a connection point between those two. But now we're at a turn where TMS can now support multiple systems like CRM, expense management platforms, order to cash platforms, PSPs like Stripe and PayPal. And so now we have the ability to support multiple verticals with really specific use cases to help not only automate their workflows, but help them move more efficiently in terms of tracking risk, managing cash, and setting guidance. The second part of the platform is data enrichment. And so we're able to now take all of these different streams of data, enrich the data to help it make sense. An example of that would be, when you're doing a bottoms-up forecast, for example, it's dependent on, invoice due date for a B2B company. But we know invoice due date does not always correlate to cash receipt date. And so we're able to run regression analysis on data in service of helping the cash flow forecast be more accurate. And then the third part of the platform is strategic insights. And this is where AI is acting as an agent or a co-pilot to help assist you in making your next proactive decision. It can do things like help you understand when you're going to have a deficit in cash, giving you insight into peaks and troughs of cash, but also giving you forecast recommendations or accuracy suggestions down to the bill and the invoice level. So now we kind of almost have an extension of the Treasury team wrapped into a platform, which is awesome because it can help you continue to manage the business and move from operational to strategic. When you think about connectivity, your solutioning should be multimodal. And we do have a multimodal connectivity type. We're able to connect into banks, ERPs using APIs, SFTPs, open bankings, but also unique data parsers that are proprietary to the company. And this all really helps to enrich AI to help the practitioner really understand what's happening with their data, but in a real-time fashion. And so we can do things like now we can automatically tag transactions. So as all those transactions are coming in from the bank, we can ensure that they're tagged using AI. We can use predictive analytics to help understand what's happening with our cash. So in the event that we need to augment our forecast in service of landing a number, we can do that. We can understand payment behavior at a deeper level of granularity. And so really understanding collections behavior from our customers, when we're going to receive funds, and then also helping to instruct how we manage AP in terms of working capital optimization. And then also we can reconcile. So we can reconcile to the GL, closed loop transactions, which really helps teams to shorten close, increase their, improve their DSO times and DPO times by using AI as an assistant. Leading companies are running on the Nihilus platform. There's both private and public companies. When you think about the compositions of the teams, we have companies that are cash rich, that are cash poor. We have some companies that don't even have a treasury person in the seat, but it's really being ran by the controller who's managing treasury workflows. And so we're able to kind of scale with organizations as they continue through the maturation cycle of becoming strong treasury teams. So I'm going to kick it off to Natty. I'd love Natty for you to give a quick intro into Taboola, help us understand your treasury landscape, help us understand what the composition of the team is from your role and your perspective.
Sure. Thank you very much, Matt. So let me introduce you to Taboola, right? So Taboola is the leading native advertising platform. I think the largest one, if I would say, with almost more than, like you say here, more than 50,000 ad publishers and more the same numbers of advertisers on our platform. We are connecting between uh, big agencies, big companies that want, to spend some money on advertising and don't want to use Google or any one of the walled garden companies like Facebook, Google, and all those listed and want to play, with the open web. So Taboola is basically what we are doing. We get in touch, we engage with the CNN, with AP, with Fox, with any of the big publishers in the world. We gain some exclusivity or some place on their some assets on their websites and we flowing advertising on their website. So we're dealing with thousands of transactions on a monthly basis, from either from the advertisers or paying to the publishers, putting aside, all the ongoing managing operations that we have with, with our suppliers like any other company, right? But on the real business that we have here, we're dealing with multi-thousand of transaction per month. So currently in my team, we have more than 50 uh, team members globally, almost 100, including the subcontractors, spreading in 43 different countries. We're managing 15 different banks, types of banks with more than 100 banks account, as you see here. And we are dealing with 18 different currencies. So manage all those, big numbers here needs to take a very clear dashboard and take decision on, in an instant. So yeah, it's very challenging. And when I joined here, we didn't have Nihilus, and I'll share with you in a minute what happened since then.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah, it
bullet.
sounds like you joined a really awesome company at a unique time in its life cycle. It sounds like you guys are growing pretty quickly, a lot of international exposure, and actually some great online presence. I just got a couple of ads from Taboola on my phone, so it was really cool to see. Um,
We targeting
uh,
you,
yeah. Natty, I want to zero in a bit. I know you mentioned challenges and you kind of gave a really great picture, illustrative view of kind of the landscape that you guys face. And I think it's very similar to a lot of the landscape of our audience and practitioners. But maybe let's focus on number one for a second around manual errors and distrusted data. When you're managing a large process, I would imagine the ability to encounter errors amongst your team probably increases. Can you shed some light on what that looked like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the end of the day, on the traditional way, when you're trying to collect data about, bank reconciliation, what the status of your bank at, the specific moment. So what I used to do, I used to go to my treasurer and ask him, can you help me, can you help me understand what is my status right now, right? And then he said, no problem. I'll get in touch with this controller and that controllers. You see 50 people over there and it needs to pull all the data in one big spreadsheet. And then you provide me the numbers. I take and I say, okay, does that make sense that I have this amount of money in our banks currently? Can I take decision, do this and that? Can I pay him or whatever? And then a minute after that, he came back to me and say, hey, you know what? Excuse me, I had a mistake here. I took the wrong number. I did not put, the right currency. I
Yeah,
forgot that I have some fixed impact and stuff like that. And it happened to me, right? In my first quarter when I joined Taboola. So we
of course.
definitely have, when it's manual, it's subject to an error. This is a fact. It is what it is.
Yeah, when just curious because I think everyone can resonate using Excel and understanding when you've made an error and understanding the impact of the company, and sometimes it's larger than you probably would want. What was the impact like for you and the leadership team when that error was made in terms of the balances?
Well, Taboola is a unique company because we guided in a way our free cash flow, which is not something very common, I would say, on a public company. We have our own
Definitely.
reason. It's a public information, so I can elaborate more about this one. So every time we had to monitor those numbers, those free cash flow forecasting or the current state of our cash position or our cash balances, so we would know what action should we or should not take at the same time. It was very hard for us, to take this number for granted and say, okay, now we understand that, I don't know, we are few days before the end of the quarter, and we are tracking this metric, and we need to take decision based on this metric. And we are not positive, I was not positive sure that the number that were provided were accurate. So there
Yeah.
were times that, personally, I said to my manager, hey, see, we think we are, I mean, according to what I know, we are landing over here. And then a few days later, I had to come back to him and say, sorry, I forgot, or he forgot, or whomever forgot to add this account to his spreadsheet. 100 banks account, it's a lot of numbers,
Right.
like I said earlier. So yeah, we took some decision, I would say, down the road that were not, 100% data backups.
Yeah. Far from ideal, and I'm sure some of the audience will resonate with that. But
Let me share something, Matt. In one of our manager's offices, there's a huge sign on this place. It says, "In God we trust, all the rest bring data." So, so bottom line, I mean, we are a finance guy. We believe in data, not on, people can generate any number they can, but we need an accurate data and reliable.
Agree.
100%.
Agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really good point because when we think about AI and the utilization of it, we also have to hone in and focus on data, and which brings me to my next point, also visibility. So you guys have over 20 entities, it sounds like, multiple bank accounts. I think you quoted about 100, which is not insignificant. How important was getting real-time visibility for you to understand it at any given point in the day, how much cash you had around the world?
Well, I wouldn't say first is 103 bank account. We count them. But I wouldn't say that it's a day-to-day decision that I have to take. I mean, I would say that if you were to take me to my former position when I was managing burn rate, for instance, when we were a smaller company, then this question were, very accurate for me because I was
Mhm.
literally ask my previous controller, what is our status? What's our burn rate? I mean, did this customer paid us? Yes or no? Because we are a public company, and in
Yep.
terms of cash flow, we're doing very well. So I wouldn't say it's a daily metric that I'm, at least not myself. Maybe the treasurer would do that, to make sure that the payment went through, the collection,
Mhm.
received on time. But I would definitely say that as a public company, which not very stressed in terms of cash, on the end of the period, when we need to monitor our KPIs or anytime we had reported to our SET, then again, one of our tracker were at free cash flow and our cash balances. So
Right.
we had to take decision based on that. Another
Yeah.
example I can give you is uh, uh, we had a very huge loan. We had a loan and we had a few prepayment over there. When before we decided to do prepayment, and we want to make sure that we're taking the right decision to do this prepayment. So instead of waiting few days up to a week up until all the banks were reconciled to our books and so forth, we were able to enter the banks and say, okay, right now it's a good time to do the prepayment.
Yeah.
What's the status? Let's take decision. Okay, tomorrow it's done. This is a small thing, but it's a very good example of how decision can take, longer if you don't have the
Definitely.
right data in front of you.
Yeah.
So I would
Makes
say
such a big
that's a very
difference.
good, you know, situation that were from a real time happened here.
Makes a
Definitely.
huge difference. Just a quick reminder here that you can get your questions, pop them in as we're going. We've got plenty already. I'm seeing them coming through. We will make time for them. But if anything comes up as Matt and Natty are speaking, please get those questions in and we'll come to them. But Matt, back to you.
Perfect. So, taking it further, we talked a little bit about distrust in data, multiple data source, large operations, a lot of processes. We talked about kind of the end period process around lack of visibility, the need to kind of understand how to augment cash when it comes to that last period to land that free cash flow number, since you guys are guiding.
Right.
Let's talk about reconciliation. Now that everything is done, what does a reconciliation story look like for you guys? What was the challenge there?
Sure. Um, One of the main goal, I mean, when you need to provide an actuals to compare them to the budget, right? It's a very core business process, in any business, right?
Right.
And you need to see where you landed each period. I always say that until you're not finalizing the reconciliation process, you would never know how your actuals looks like. And sometimes you mentioned some error, sometimes you reconcile it, not properly, and you thought that you paid this supplier, but you paid the other one, or something like that.
Right, right.
So reconciliation process takes us a lot of time, took a lot of time. Um, and that was the main blocker for me to start the closing processes of my team. It's always the first part, and it was very dependent, human being dependent. I mean, if someone was, I don't know, sick on the specific day in the US entity, whatever, they won't be able to close the big reconciliation on time, and everything were stuck up until this process was finalized. So
Yeah,
for instance, today, if I need to meet my KPIs, either for in internal purposes, to have the actual ready for my internal reports, or if I want to have a shorter timeline or meet the guideline or the timeline, sorry, to report to the market, bank reconciliation were always the first stop, the first,
instrumental.
station of this whole road. So yeah,
Definitely.
definitely very, very important phase on my closing processes.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that a lot of people diminish. It's like the bank recon, to your point, is the starting block. Before we do it, the whole earnings process, we have to understand how we landed the quarter. And then that gives credence and guidance to how we think we're going to forecast next quarter. So it's a very intense period. And having been on the other side of it, maybe someone reporting into you, I definitely feel even now talking to you the importance of making sure that that process is set.
Definitely. I mean, think about it. If I was not under a strict gap rules, if I were on my new startup, basically I could do all my actual versus budget only using your software.
Right.
If you were tagged properly, I don't need my ERP anymore, right? You know
Right.
exactly what were the blocks of the payments, either payroll, suppliers, vendor, whatever. I could see it in a minute. I don't need, I mean, to wait up until all the data will flow into my ERP and then flow out to any spreadsheet whatsoever, just to compare it to my budget. So yeah,
Definitely.
it's a very huge milestone on the closing processes for any other steps.
Awesome. And I know we kind of highlighted this earlier, but it sounds like a lot of data, kind of very, very challenging landscape, visibility, timing issues to viewing cash, leading to reconciliation challenges, all kind of have a downstream impact on our ability to provide guidance to the street. Do you want to maybe just
Right.
highlight that last point on difficulty forecasting a bit for
Right.
everyone in the audience?
Yeah. I don't know if any one of this respectful audience tried to forecast free cash flow. I think it wasn't of the most hard exercise that I ever had in the finance, because
Totally agree.
there's two types of approaches. There's a direct and indirect approach. So you want to go bottom up, top down. You want to do accounting wise, direct wise. It's very hard. And if you have a multiple banks and multiple transactions, it's even harder. If your working capital, change in mass, and one customer paid 1 day later, it's true, right? I mean, you cannot
Right.
do all your forecasting properly. I mean, so how do you do that? So I would say that forecasting free cash flow, it's a very, 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 very challenging, I would say. And I would say, and I can say that if you don't have it tagged properly, and you don't know exactly what are the real transactions flew into your bank account, it's very hard to do it on any other man. I mean, there are some a few types of methods to do it, but
Yeah.
we tried all
Totally.
of them during the year. I can tell you for sure that up until we have the transaction tagged per item on a real-time basis, it was very hard for us to find the real balance between what we forecasted and try to iterate each
Yeah.
month or each quarter to what we forecast and what we actually have, so we can see how far we are, and find the right balance in between.
Right.
So it was very challenging, still challenging, but yeah, using tagging helps us a lot during this process.
Awesome,
Good
awesome.
stuff.
So,
Guys, I'm just going to give you a 20-minute warning to the end of the webinar, because I know, Matt, you've got a very slick video for us as well, and we do want to get to some of the audience questions. So obviously we'll talk about some of the solutions now. We've alluded to a lot of it as we're going along, but just so you're aware, so we can squeeze in all our questions at the end.
perfect, perfect. So obviously, Natty, a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. Let's maybe talk about the solutioning a bit. What has automated cash reporting how has it benefited your organization now that you have that with Nihilus?
Well, I think the first and the most important thing that I can see the transaction, my free cash flow on a real-time basis per item, because every company measuring her free cash flow differently, right? I mean, each one of them have a different buckets that they are monitoring. They can, some of them important from some of the companies are carrying from their payroll, the other one from CapEx, whomever. In our case, we have built our free cash flow customized to our needs.
Yeah.
So I could say how many cash flew into our banks from specific advertisers or paid to specific type of publishers, and we were able to analyze it and also exclude any tax payment because we have a lot of them to many different types of taxes. And so, for instance, our tax manager will be able to see that the local controller in EMEA paid the DST taxes on time without need to call him or her and ask if it was done, yes or no. It just popped up in the Nihilus and you can see, transaction flew out. So it helps us a lot. The second thing that I believe that helped us very much is to like I said previously, to improve our free cash flow forecasting and to take
Mhm.
decision right on time. For instance, if I see that I collected more, and we did see, for instance, that we collected more than what expected for many reasons, it's very hard to monitor that, to forecast that, but we did see that. So we have some room to, to pay earlier to our suppliers and vice
Oh,
versa,
great.
that we could take a real decision based on that and monitor and capped our cash flow properly the way we want it instead of
Mhm.
being, surprised and being, oh, that's what happened. Okay.
Right.
And
Yep.
specifically, on January 1st or 2 or 3, you see, okay, we finalized the bank reconciliation. This is the result. Not anymore. We are controlling the narrative. We know exactly where we are. We know exactly how it's going to look like. So it's
That's
amazing.
awesome. It sounds like, you've been able to kind of almost like compartmentalize and structure the data a bit more, which has led to better decision making. So now that you have the AI tagging, that's kind of helping to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, you understand very quickly the categorization of your cash. It sounds like also now that you guys can scale a bit more without friction. So as you think about the team growing and Taboola going through iteration,
Yeah,
now that you have automation, it seems like it's a little bit easier maybe to not have anxiety around the growth of the company trajectory. But I'd love to hear from you around some of the type decisions. I think you alluded to one which I think is really interesting around having visibility at the end of the quarter, understanding now that you're in an excess cash position and using some of that to maybe pay suppliers earlier, make or take certain decisions that will benefit the company. Can you highlight maybe some other decisions or any other decisions that the system has helped you and your executive team make
sure,
towards the end of the quarter?
sure. So I remember of two of them, very, very fresh one. One decision that we took here were to pay payroll, for instance, earlier than was expected to our employees to avoid it might be sound funny, but to avoid having a provision in our books and doing all the audit process, for instance,
Mhm.
right? I mean, if you had a time to pay it earlier, you don't need to open any provision in your book. You don't need to document all this because you actually paid that. So we took a decision here that saves us a lot of effort from the controller's works, hassles, following days. The other decision that we saw here, that we saw a major impact of our FX, and we didn't know exactly which currency were actually had the most impact on our FX. We saw it in our financials, but we was not sure exactly what happened there. Using Nilus, we could isolate the BRL, and we saw that in the last quarter there was a very deflation on this currency because we
Mhm.
saw that you can slice it and dice it per currencies and see exactly the impact of the FX, and we see a major impact over there. So it saves us a lot of time of trying to analyze from our ERP what exactly happened there. It was very, the answer was right in front of us. It was easy for us to monitor it and see it on our dashboard. So
I
those are
love that.
two,
Yep.
you know, from the last few months, from the last month, sorry, in examples that were actually save time to my team, and and we actually took decision based on those, on the number that we saw in Nihilus. So yeah,
I love
definitely.
that. I love that. And maybe just to quantify some of that, Natty, it sounds like, real-time visibility to hundreds of accounts, near 100% AI automated cash flow tagging. Sounds like the decision-making framework has become a lot stronger in a short iteration of time towards the end of the quarter, and even helping to kind of drive some of those KPIs that are impacting the street. We all know how hard forecasting free cash flow can be and guiding to it. My goodness, I can't even imagine. It's funny. Sometimes you see these long ranges of free cash flow guidance because it's just so difficult
Right,
to guide to. But Natty,
right.
thank you so much for sharing. I think this is really important. I think a lot of folks will resonate with it. I want to jump into a bit of a demo now because I think seeing is believing. I think we've talked a lot about the platform. We talked a lot about the capabilities. So let's jump into an interactive demo and let's actually see how it works. So what you're looking at is the cash position screen, and really this tool is really dynamic and powerful. You can view balances across relationships, but not only banks. Think about this as an entire repository for all of your financial data related to cash. We can cut by currency, by subsidiary. We also have the ability to add custom labels. So in the event that you want to add a geotag or mark cash as restricted or non-restricted, you can do that here as well. And then there's type. And so think of loans, investments, merchant accounts, wallets, cash in transit that you like to track across your cash ecosystem, all centered in one place in the platform. To the far right here, we give you a sense of counterparty exposure, FX exposure, so you can stay on top of risk management. And then as we scroll down, we have a view by relationship, by account, broken out in more granular detail. We also have the ability to see the original balance, meaning its original local currency, and then the converted balance using either your ERP rate or a third-party rate source to get a USD equivalent. We also do a back-end validation. I think this is a key differentiator for Nihilus. We do a back-end validation across all accounts so that you know that you're working on the most relevant and accurate data to make decisions based off of. Where things get interesting is the ability to kind of pivot across this view to see multiple things. So we can isolate subsidiaries, for example, just to see subsidiaries by themselves. We can also look at currencies in isolation, and we can export and share this data in its native state across our team. Where we add on top of the already existing workflow for positions is the ability to use AI to help as your nearest agent or co-pilot to help you understand what's happening with your data. So AI is doing things like giving us insight of when we're going to have excess balances, when we might have insufficient funds in subsidiaries, and also helping us stay on track to avoid hazards when it comes to FX and financial exposure. On the back end of the system, Nihilus is taking all data and creating this repository, enriching the data, and then helping you make strategic decisions based off of that. And so what we're seeing here is a full repository of all bank account data in one place. So we see Wells Fargo, Citi transactions, JP Morgan. We also have a sense to understand the total amount based on this time window that has come in, the categorization rate, and also the aggregate debits and credits, so we can kind of understand the movement of cash. The reason why this is important, and I want to spend time here, is because traditionally with traditional TMS, a lot of this tagging is maintained by multiple rules. I've talked to clients where they're using 10,000 plus rules just to maintain the tagging of their transactions so they can have an accurate view of what's happening within their cash flow. And even when they do set it up, it requires maintenance and someone's full-time job, and so it's not really automation. What we're doing here is we're utilizing AI to help do the automation for you. And so we can see here, for example, that AI has picked out from the Citibank transaction, it's belonging to Rippling, it should be payroll and benefits, and it's non-restricted related to Nihilus Global. So now you have an agent that's kind of helping you categorize cash, and you can approve this and accept this change, changing it from purple to black if you feel comfortable, and you'll never have to do it again in the future. The reason why this is important is if you pay attention to this category here, this is the most granular presentment of cash flow that you'd like to see within the system. And so we can see the categorization here. They have vendors, debt payments, marketing, etc. And let's see where all that flows in on the forecasting screen. The way we communicate about forecasting is it's Excel-like in nature, connected to true data sources like the ERP, but then supercharged with AI. And so now we have a tool that's ultimately flexible, that can reduce manual error, and that can also help us drive improvement in performance as we think about setting our near-term and long-term targets in the future for cash. So to orient us around the screen, everything to the left here is historical. This green section is the current iteration of forecast, actual versus forecast. And then this purple section is the out period of forecast. Many different things you can do here. So similar to Excel, this is ultimately flexible. We can change how the forecast is rolling up, half monthly, monthly, quarterly. So every 2 weeks, monthly, quarterly, etc. We can also change the time horizon or change the actual specific window if we wanted to really highlight or hone in to a specific period of time. And then we also have the ability to drill down on a subsidiary basis. So if you want to see everything disaggregated from the parent level to understand what's happening across entities or even currencies to get a sense of cash flow exposure, you can do that here. So this view is the parent view. We can also look at entities juxtaposed to one another. We can also look at currencies juxtaposed to one another. And so we get a holistic view across our platform to understand how our cash is performing with many different cuts and segments of data. So I think a big question is, how is the forecast working, right? That's ultimately the main question here that comes to mind when you're looking at a tool like this. And the answer is many ways. So similar to Excel, we can copy and paste into cells. We can add formulas. We can make cells dependent on other categories. We can use expected transactions, thinking about open bills and open AP to help derive our forecast. And we can also use historical data to that end as well. So just to remind us, everything to the left here were those categories that we had set on the transaction screen. So as transactions are coming in, they have the ability to be allocated for our forecast, but also on that transaction screen, we can write to the GL. So pushing back to the ERP to close out and fully automate accounting. When we think about the forecast, as I mentioned, there's many different ways we can compile the numbers. So when you think about the category level, we can forecast using manual input, expected transactions, but now we can also utilize AI to help us derive the forecast. So AI is working as your nearest agent to understand trends, doing analysis on the numbers, and really helping you to land that month end or quarter end target on cash. And essentially, it can help you derive the forecast out for the period that you're looking to track. When we think about workflow management of forecasting, we know that there's multiple pieces involved. And so we need to understand also the tools that are in the system that are going to help us achieve our goals. The first one, very similar to the position screen, is AI. And so we can see here that AI is giving us flags down to the bill and the invoice level to help us be more accurate on payments. It's also giving us insight of excess cash when we're going to have that available, and deeper forecast accuracy suggestions to give us understanding of trends, what's happening year to date on certain categories, so we can track any of the large outliers. We also have the ability to have collaboration. And so now you can communicate with your team, have everything centralized in one workflow. And so when we go to our collaboration layer, we can see comments, we can add files, we can see priority levels to make sure that all the work is being concentrated in one platform. There's many different other things in the system, but I just want to focus on the positions in cash flow. When you think about Nihilus, it's both treasury and accounting automation. And so we're really helping to help treasurers and controllers achieve their financial goals, especially with adjacent processes within the finance stack like collections, etc. But that's it. Thanks for viewing the demo.
Wonderful stuff. So we are now going to press on and come to some of your questions. But guys, there's tons of questions for you. So I'm going to come over to you. There's all sorts that will come to both of you. We'll get through as many of these as we possibly can. So Natty, one for you first. What was your RFI process and how did you actually decide to implement Nihilus? Talk us through that a little bit.
Sure. So we actually observed many type of TMS. When we chose to work with Nilus, what personally I was very focused on the type of the group that going to implement the system. I must share with you. I mean, we tried to implement one of the biggest, and I wouldn't say name here, of the TMS software before my time here. And the group here shared with me that it was not successful onboarding due to the implementation process. And it's very, you need to find the right partner to work with and make sure that you understand your needs. And when we understood that Nilus provide us, the right answers and share with us that their onboarding will be very fast, no, not a lot of iteration, not a lot of implementation workforce required from our side, then we thought that that's the best solution that we should choose.
Mhm.
The other factors that personally were the main reason that I chose now is because they said that they do have this back reconciliation done automatically.
Yeah.
This is something was very, very important for me specifically, not to be relying on, on teams and have faster closing processes. So was a very big plus, at least from my end.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Matt, there's tons of questions coming in for you as well. Can you walk
Wonderful.
us through a little bit more around the bank connectivity side with Nihilus? What are
Yeah.
the options?
I'll be really quick here. So just to create more or less a partition between next gen TMS and legacy TMS, it's really in the connectivity to platforms. And so when I say multimodal connectivity, what I actually mean is not only supporting legacy SFTP and API, but also utilizing open banking. All open banking really is a read-only user on your platform where we're able to ingest information very quickly. And so the connectivity time is within 48 hours and you can have everything loaded into the system. And then the second one I would say is more germane to Nihilus as a company. And we've built proprietary parsers to parse any file format. So not just Excel and PDF and CSV, but we can be able to ingest multiple different data sets from multiple systems. We just need to understand what fields you want and where to point them. And so when you think about that from that perspective, there's no bank, there's no ERP, and there's no adjacent system that doesn't have the opportunity or ability to connect into the platform.
Awesome.
So that's what we mean.
Wonderful, Matt. Thank you for that. Natty, another question for you. The stats you gave around the uplift in the cash forecast accuracy after implementation of Nihilus, how did you actually measure that? How did you get to that stat? And did it differ over different time horizons? How did it work?
Well, I think the major impact was that we could isolate it per segments, right? I mean, when you're trying to do forecasting, any type of forecasting, right? If you have the right variables, it's easier for you to do the forecasting. So we did have, our P&L, our balance sheet. It was easier for us to do forecasting on this manner. But when you understand the trends, on a real-time basis, it's much easier for you to do the actual forecasting. So with Nihilus, we had the ability to actually isolate it per segment and monitor it per segment and try to see the trend backwards and going forward. So it was easier for us to actually build some formula that will try to help us do the forecasting. And when I say forecasting, it's in the short intervals. It's not give you at this point at least a longer view, but it could give you a short intervals for a quarter, 2 quarters. It helps us to do it all the iteration. So definitely.
Awesome stuff. Thank you. And a very direct question, which I thought we would get, which is about the implementation process. How long did it take from start to finish? Did you have a dedicated team working on it, or did you just do it all alongside your daily tasks? Natty, how did it work?
So I'll start with the second question. We did it along with our daily tasks. Nothing unique. We did not dedicate the unique team for that. So, and for your first question, there are few few chapters, few items that we were implemented down the road. So the first chapter, I think, was all the connecting all the banks to the systems. It took us approximately, I would say, between month or two max, all the banks. And the rest of the process, I think that Nihilus did a very good job on their AI tools of the tagging. That was a big, something that took us a while to understand how we do all the tagging manually. But once they figure out, it was very fast implementation. So we were up and running after a few months, as you can see.
Awesome stuff. I know we've got a ton of other questions, but we will come to them offline. And some of you are asking for the presentation and also the demo. We will be getting a video of all of this for replay, and we'll also have it as a podcast, and we will follow up with any of you that we haven't been able to get to in terms of your questions. But guys, we've covered so much today in this session. It would just be really great to have some key takeaways and maybe a little bit of parting advice for the audience. Anyone starting their AI journey or wanting to progress on their AI journey, what would be your top piece of advice? Natty, coming to you first.
Well, that's a very good question. First of all, project properly, know exactly what's your final goal before you start the journey. For instance, in my case, my final goal is automated bank reconciliation. And all the models in the middle were part of the journey that I have. And this is what I'm aiming for. And I know this is specifically what an AI can provide me a lot of impact. So this is my personal takeaway on this one.
Brilliant stuff. And Matt?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's definitely important to talk to people that have an understanding of the space, that also have done your job before. And so I think that's really important. I think also being very clear on what your pain points are and what needs to be automated. I think a lot of times when we think about the RFP process, we put together a templated list of questions with check boxes, and we don't really understand what we're actually trying to buy and what we're trying to solve. So I think doing the deeper learning to think about what is broken today, in my process, and then using that to be your scorecard that you use to kind of vet candidates, or TMS candidates on. I think that's important. I think also seeing is believing. I think demos are great, but having the ability to sense and interact with the platform is important, so you can understand if it's actually going to meet your need. And so one thing that we do in order to kind of feed into that is we offer, POCs, and we give clients the keys and they can drive the car. They just need to bring it back by a certain hour, to see if they enjoy it, if they want to use it. So yeah, I would say those are probably the key considerations from my side.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
If I may, Elinor,
Go
sorry.
on, Natty, go
One
on.
more thing. It's one more important thing. From Matt's point, it's not necessary it has to be broken, but if you're planning to scale and you know that in order to scale your operation, it would be dependent on headcount, and it's very hard, to do it in parallel. So I think using tools like any AI tools, because I'm using them many verticals, not only on the treasury. This is, I think, the most efficient way to take ownership on your processes and make sure that you won't be surprises once or on the day you are, scaling, because we see some jumping in our businesses, and we need to make sure that you are ready for that. And this is that's why one of the reasons that I chose Nihilus here helped me with the treasury, because we knew that there are months that we're getting multiple transactions and stuff like that, and we need someone to help us to wrap everything on the same place. So yeah, definitely.
Wonderful stuff, guys. Thank you so much. I know there'll be more questions from the audience, so there's some very handy contact details on the screen for you there. Do reach out to the Nihilus team. You can also find Natty and me on LinkedIn if there's anything else you wanted to ask. And as I said, we'll get all the materials out to you so you can have a replay. And thank you ever so much for all of your questions. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. My best advice for you around AI is stay curious, but also stay safe. But thank you guys ever so much for today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
It's been a
Elinor.
pleasure.
Thank you, Matt.
Take care.
Bye.